I am Brandon K. Hedgepeth, and I want to welcome you to the Tansson Talk Show, where our mission here is to help bring people together. I am very excited to continue on my winter season of the show by speaking with Jax Warner. I'm so excited to have you on.
I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm so excited to have you. So, first of all, how are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing all right. I'm surviving.
Well, I really hope that you are doing well, and I'm very excited to have you on my show. And so, before we get started, are you able to introduce yourself for the watching and listening audience here today?
Oh yeah. So I'm Jax, and I am a college student studying microbiology and minoring in language sciences. I also have multiple animals that I'm dealing with, including an emotional support animal named Beetlejuice, and he's a cat. So I have a lot of hobbies also, so there's a lot to talk about. But I just had nose surgery, so I'm a little struggling in the vocal category.
Well, I hope that you are doing well with your recovery.
Yeah, I'm doing about as good as you could expect.
Well, that's good to hear. And like I said, I'm very excited to speak with you. And so, I guess to actually start off, though, I did want to ask. So, since you are studying microbiology, how has that been going for you? Because is this now your senior year?
Yeah, it's been going pretty good. I'm planning on going into a laboratory science program to do like cultures and bench work in hospitals. So it's pretty fun stuff. I am like one of the few people who doesn't want to do research and just wants to do the bench work. So,
Wow. And so, how did you actually end up wanting to do microbiology?
well, I was initially planning on doing veterinary sciences or a biomedical degree. And then I ended up taking a intro to microbiology class for biological sciences, and I really liked doing the lab work. And so I got really into it. And then I was like, wait, this is all the stuff I like and all the things that I know about already, so I might as well just pursue that.
Well, that makes perfect sense. And let's say I do know that you are studying at Virginia Tech, and so now, like 3.5 years in, how has your experience overall, been for you from entering in August of 2020 to now?
Well, the school aspect is pretty good. The social aspect, because of COVID, is a little goofy, but I think that is just because I came in right as the pandemic was starting. So that's an interesting transition. And also, every time you get sick, it's a whole ordeal. But I mean, yeah, I like the classes. I've had some really fun professors that are pretty cool. So,
Yeah, that's good to hear, though. And like I said, I'm glad that you are at least, enjoying your path thus far. And yeah, since you mentioned too that, prior to microbiology, that you were interested in veterinary sciences. So, so when you originally entered with that path in mind, so how long had you been interested in that and pursuing that path?
uh, pretty much since I was a small child, because I was like, animals. This is the only way you can take care of animals, right? But actually, if you do, there's a bunch of different roles that are involved in like veterinary programs, like the vet schools or in vet clinics. And so I could still work in a vet clinic, get my degree, and not have to go through the whole process of vet school and then possibly open a clinic. Because I was never interested in opening a clinic. I just was like, maybe I'll get in with a zoo or something, which I can do now. So,
Well, hey, that works out then.
yep.
Yeah, and so like I said, I definitely am so glad that, like I said, you're able to pursue the path that you want to go through, and overall, like how long into your degree was it that you took that microbiology class and realized, hey, this is something I could do?
Well, I think I actually took the microbiology class my sophomore year, and I had made the mistake of having three courses that were lecture and lab combos. So I wouldn't recommend that because all three of those labs also had lab reports to go with them each week. And that is not fun writing all of that information. And then also, I was taking a course for my linguistics. So I did end up being like, I do love a lab heavy program, but I will not be doing 3 labs in the same semester again. So
I don't even blame you for that. I mean, that definitely is quite heavy coursework. And how'd you manage to deal with that? And did you do that alongside any sort of organizations on campus or any other outside involvement in work?
well, the only real outside thing I do is I work on campus with the dining hall. So they're pretty flexible as far as hours go. Like if I need to change anything, if I decide like, hey, my weekly schedule is not working this way, they'd be pretty good at communicating like when I can actually work. So I just would adjust my hours as needed. And then other than that, I would just do like little events or something every now and then, but I wouldn't do like a consistent club or anything like that. So I didn't have like a set time where I was like, oh God, and like running around all day. So I did have more time to like at night worry about working on my schoolwork, or in the mornings in between classes I had like a little bit of time. So sometimes I would just have like a class at 8 a.m. and then a class like at 11. And so between that, I would just bring my laptop wherever I was and just start like writing away.
Well, overall, I mean, at least they're able to be flexible, with you, especially for student employment. And overall, have you been enjoying your time, working there?
Yeah, I actually have a manager role now. So I'm the kitchen student manager, which is pretty fun because I do just get to tell a bunch of people around while also just working in a kitchen. So not too shabby for me. It is a lot of like cleaning more so than food prep, I will say, since I'm usually closing at night, but not too bad.
Well, that is overall, like I said, good to hear. And how long have you been in your current manager role?
I have been a kitchen student manager for just the past year. And then before that, I was a student assistant manager. And that was for, I think, like the second semester in until I got promoted to KSM.
Well, that makes, I said, perfect sense. And out of the two roles from your previous role to your now student manager role, kitchen student manager role, what would you say like has been your favorite part about transitioning? And is there anything that you missed from your previous role?
I do like, it's kind of like a, both are going to be a similar answer because I like, there's a pro and a con to the same thing. So I like being placed in one area and kind of just being in control of that area. But I also miss from my old role is that I could move around. But it's like there's pros and cons on both sides, so it's like a double-edged sword.
Well, that makes perfect sense. And yeah, but I mean, like I said, I'm glad that you've been able to at least stay active. And did you know that that type of role was one that you wanted when you first started at Virginia Tech?
I actually didn't know it existed when I first started. I actually got like snagged up by the kitchen team, and they were like, "Hey, we like this one. We're gonna keep them." And then I ended up back there, so it was kind of funny. I was initially like all over the place because the dining hall is one of those where it's like multiple shops, and so you can pick like which one you're better at, but they're still gonna move you around for the most part. So it was pretty funny just being snatched up by the kitchen.
Well, I'm glad that they chose, a great and reliable worker, and so, and I'm sure that you've been absolutely enjoying your position.
Yeah, it's pretty fun.
Yeah, and I also know, of course, you have a minor in language studies, and so when did that come about for you?
I instantly, when I went into school, because I in high school took Latin, I instantly was like, I'm taking Latin because I'm going into a medical degree and I'm going to need to know the names of things and the root words, and that'll help me. And so when I went into college, I was like, ooh, linguistics. And luckily, Virginia Tech has a language sciences minor. They do not have a major, but they have like this tight knit group of professors that have set up a language sciences minor like semi recently for college. And funnily enough, I had the same professor 3 times who actually was the first linguist at Virginia Tech. And He is really cool. I really liked his courses, but I was instantly going into it being like, I want to do that at least somewhat. And so I took some like of the basic classes, like religion and culture classes and intro to linguistics in my freshman year. And then I just like went with it.
That makes perfect sense. And like I said, I'm glad that you've been able to enjoy it and become very familiar with the small, tight knit group of professors. And yeah, I mean, and overall, like, what's your focus been in this sense? Like, is like I know you originally went in for Aladdin because of your veterinary work you were originally pursuing, but I guess now is that still a part of the focus, or how is that for you?
Well, the Latin and stuff is still pretty helpful for like any sort of biological sciences situation. So I do understand a lot of the words better, and also looking in other languages, it's more understandable because Latin's the root of all the Romance languages, you know. But I did recently. We were looking into like more of the culture aspects and like surrounding languages, how people study languages, and I do like that. I think it's a very fun like role to be in. And I took a course on the languages of Native Americas, and I specifically did a project on a dead language that used to be in this area, and so it was more of like a historical thing than anything, and it was really cool. So it is kind of more of a fun thing, but then also it's helpful when I'm taking my other courses like microbial genetics and stuff. Then I know what the words mean for the most part.
Well, hey, at least that's working out for you. And what would you say has been like, I mean, between your major, your minor, or any electives or prerequisites you may have taken, what would you say have been like your favorite and least favorite classes at Virginia Tech thus far?
Um, I would say my favorite is still that like any microbiology lab is really fun because you're just like sitting there. It's very similar each time, but you're sitting there and you're like setting up experiments and you have to like grow cultures a few days ahead of time. So like you'll spend a lab, you'll do like the previous lab's prep work, you'll do whatever experiment with that, and then you get to prep an entire set of cultures. Or like we get to. It's weird. It seems tedious. Like everyone else thinks it's tedious, but we'll be like sitting there like taking cultures and putting them into a new agar, and I don't know. It's just like weirdly soothing for me. I'm just like, this is weirdly therapeutic. So I do like those, and then I also really liked. I took a religion and culture course that was an introduction just to religion and culture, and it was called Friendship, and it was taught by these two professors who are best friends. And I think they were really cute, and they did little like podcast episodes if they weren't able to come in, and we would watch movies and stuff. And we actually at the end of the year convinced them, because there was a unit on humans and AI. We convinced them to talk about Detroit Become Human, the video game, and so I thought that was really fun.
Wow, that sounds really fun. What class did you say that was again?
It was the Intro to Religion and Culture course, specifically the one called Friendship.
Okay, that sounds kind of exciting, and I'll definitely have to ask you about that. Yeah, a little later because that just sounds really interesting.
Yeah, it was really fun.
Yeah, and I mean, like I said, I'm just so glad that you have been doing well, like I said, in your academic journey, and you know, being able to try out new experiences and new classes. But shifting gears a bit, for the personal side of things. So, how have you been, personally over these past several years, transitioning from, of course, the high school environment in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic to the present day in 2024?
Well, it's been a kind of interesting transition because I have a lot of like medical struggles that did come up a lot because of the whole pandemic situation. So, like my mental health did improve leaving high school. I will say that was a rough, a rough time. But I did have to deal with like the isolation of pandemic as everyone else did. But I wasn't too bothered about that. I did make the mistake of getting too into my hobbies and then promising a bunch of projects to people that I have not finished. um, But I mean, I've been dealing with some medical issues that have arisen since COVID. It's completely unrelated, but it just happened to have occurred. So I've been having some issues with that. But other than that, like socially and stuff, I feel like I've matured a lot in the last few years. And I've had some relationships that I did not have as much of a good time during the relationship, but I appreciate having it after the fact. So, just adulting, I guess. And I've also been dealing with like taking care of my animals and stuff like that. And then like taking care of my own mental health. So it's been an interesting transition. But I'm currently doing pretty good because I did just get my nose fixed after like 14 years of struggling. So,
Well, I'm glad that I said that one you were able to, I mean, to get that fixed as a priority there, and hopefully it will continue to, of course, heal and progress throughout the next several weeks.
yeah, I'm hoping so.
Yeah, but like I said, I'm glad though that like I said that you've overall been progressing, and even though that you've may have had some flares with your health issues since the COVID-19 pandemic, but unrelated to the pandemic, that hopefully that I mean they haven't been too intensive to at least take away from your personal life.
Yeah, I mean, I did have to deal with the transition between like changing doctors and getting new specialists and stuff, and that was a bit of a toll on my other aspects of my life going on, but it didn't take away too much. And it did leave me with some funny stories to tell people, so I do appreciate that. Especially since freshman year, I went into college having tumors. And so I became the tumor person, which is only funny because they were benign, so I was fine, but it was interesting knowing I had tumors.
But hopefully, like I said, that I mean that things have been progressing a bit better in that front.
Yeah, yeah, everything's gone pretty well. So,
That's good to know. And I do know that over these past several months, you mentioned that you've been, acquiring numerous different emotional support animals to include your emotional support cat, and I know that you did actually want to speak about that. So I did want to allow for you to head right into that.
just a correction, I did not get more emotional support animals. It is just the one. But I have been dealing with the transition of my pets at my parents' house. Uh, I had three dogs, and in August of 2020, one of them passed away. And then recently in October, another one passed away. And so the one we currently have at the house, I had to introduce my emotional support cat to. And that was an interesting situation over Thanksgiving break. And then she's been dealing with some medical issues because she's getting on the older side. But it is funny having two older animals and them, having the obvious little turmoil of being like, well, this is my territory. What are you doing here? But they've been tolerating each other. They were laying next to each other a few minutes ago, but now that Beetle has chosen to take over the area.
Well, overall, like, how has that transition been for you? Dealing with your two different animals in your space since they originally were in different spaces.
Yeah, I did have an interesting development of just like getting a new cat in August because I had just moved into an apartment and I had like just gotten comfortable with my space and I was like going into it, I was like, I want to get a cat. As soon as I can, I want to get a cat, like an emotional support cat. And I had it all planned out. And then we were like, oh, we're gonna go get him soon. And someone said that there was a free adoption day going on. And I was like, oh, we're getting him in an hour. We're going right now. And I ended up with a very sweet older cat he was named Brian, and that was funny, but we renamed him to Beetlejuice. um, and so that was interesting. He got used to the apartment life and having a kind of small area to hang out in, and he got the zoomies in the middle of the night. And so bringing him over to my parents' house, there's obviously a lot more space, and then also the dog. And initially, we thought the dog was going to be a problem because she has anxiety, so she's usually reactive. But weirdly enough, it was the cat that did not like the dog. And so they are chill with each other now, but if she suddenly approaches him, he will hiss at her. And that is just the situation we are stuck in right now. But it's not it's not too bad. It definitely could have been a worse transition. I will say it is kind of funny having to deal with having all of the cat stuff be in my personal space because we were trying to get him to be introduced to the rest of the house. So like I have the litter box that's like right next to my bed, and I'm like, well, that's not the best situation to be in, but I guess that's what I got to deal with right now.
Well, I mean, wow. I mean, definitely, I'm glad that the adoption day worked out for you, and you know, and yeah, I mean, and so how long have you had Beetlejuice now?
I've just had him since August, so it'll be what, like 4 months thereabout. Um, but yeah, he has been like weirdly chill. I think it only took him like 2 days to get used to us in our apartment, and then we like let him roam free. We had him isolated in my partner's room, and then we let him roam free like the after a few days, and then he found the best spots to nap in, and that was like his favorite activity was just finding like a spot in the sun and just being like. But he is a very friendly cat, so it was a pretty easy transition.
That makes sense. And so, how's it been for you? Like, managing, managing your animals all while trying to manage, of course, college and work and everything of that nature.
It has been interesting when I'm back in Newport News as opposed to in Blacksburg because I am working as a server at a restaurant, and then my parents are busy, and since my dog's been having issues, I've had to like be at home as much as possible to let the dog out if she needs it and take care of like feeding the cat and stuff, and he's on new meds, and so I've been dealing with it, and luckily I have like some time of break because of my surgery where I can't work. Luckily, and then also not very luckily because it is very boring just not being able to lift anything and just being stuck at the house. But um, I have been able to take care of everything for them, and I will say Beetle does definitely get up earlier than I have to be at work. So I do just feed him early, and then I don't have to worry about him for a while. But I do, when I'm back up in Blacksburg, have a lot of help from my partner and my roommates with Beatles stuff. So that is a really good thing that I have like a support system and it's not just all on me. So if I miss like dinner time, he's not going to die of starvation. I can just be like, hey, could one of you feed the cat? So I do like that. I like not having to just rely on myself. But he has been good for keeping like a schedule for me. So I do wake up in the morning to feed him pretty early, and then I have to get ready and do all my other stuff, as opposed to just sleeping through it and then being like, oh, I missed something. Oh, well.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense though. And I'm so glad that at least that you've been enjoying the transition with your animals and yeah, and being able to, I mean, to have them. And so I guess what does it mean to you to, I mean, to have these animals to take care of?
Well, I always grew up with animals. So when I was young, I had three cats initially, but I only really remember two of them. So I'll just say I had two cats. And then we like always had an animal. So one of the cats died, we got a dog, and then it would slowly transition. So we had two cats and one dog, and then one cat and two dogs, and then we had three dogs. Um, so I was always just used to having animals around. So I will say the transition to being in a dorm and not having any animal companions was really weird for me, like mentally and physically. I was just like, there's something missing here. And so when I got the apartment, I was like, I have to have an animal. I have to have some fluffy creature to keep me company. I need it. It's a must. And so it has been very good for my mental health because every now and then, if I'm upset, I can literally just come home and then just turn and find this little guy on the couch and be like, "Oh my god, hello!" And then he gets all excited and he starts purring and he does like he kneads into my leg and I'm like, "Oh my god, this creature that loves me." So it is fun to spoil him, I will say. I do love my little guy.
I absolutely love that for you. And so I guess location wise, where would you say has been the best location for you and your animals? Home in Newport News or back in Blacksburg?
Well, the home in Newport News, I think, is definitely preferred, but that's just because it's a larger space. We are getting, I will say, he does, for the cat, he does prefer having like all of his toys in one location, I think, because back in Blacksburg in the apartment, he will like lose everything, but then we'll eventually find it. It's somewhere in one general vicinity as opposed to it being lost under a bunch of random things and we can't find anything. And then for like the little toys. And then also he has his food relatively close to where we're usually hanging out. And I think he likes to eat when we're around. And so the one thing is if I'm hanging out downstairs and his food's upstairs, he just won't eat until I go upstairs. And then he's like, "Oh my god, I can eat now." So it is weird. There's pros and cons. But I do think he likes the wider space here and then also the attention from my mom. She really likes cats. But Precious, the dog, she definitely is better here because stairs are not her forte and I'm on the third floor at my apartment. So I'm glad I don't have to bring her with me.
Wow, I hope so. For your apartment, out of curiosity, so is it just stairs? Are there no elevator or anything?
There's no elevator. It's a small building. So the third floor is the top floor. And I did not choose that. My roommates and my partner's parents kind of pressured me into doing the third floor because I even said, I was like, I don't like stairs. I have a condition that makes it so stairs are kind of hard for me. And they were like, "Oh, it'll be fine. It's better to be on the top floor than in the middle or the bottom floor." And I was like, "Okay." But it hasn't been too bad, I will say. It could definitely be worse. But yeah, I could definitely have like a taller building with no elevator and that would be a struggle, but the one thing is the stairs are not too difficult to like move things. They're pretty wide set, so it could be a lot worse.
Well, I'm overall so glad, to hear that it's. I mean, it hasn't been too bad for you in that regard, and yeah. And how has it been like, you know, especially like with winter breaks and summer, like moving your animals from from one location to the other, because I mean it is a tad a bit of a distance.
Yeah, it's a long drive for a cat. I feel like it's just on the cusp where we don't have to set up his litter box in the middle of the road, but it is a while, so he is not too happy about it. So the drive coming back is usually easier, but going to Blacksburg, somehow it always takes longer to get there. Like the one time when we had to pack him up, and his main distaste is just being in the carrier. He's like, "I'm in the carrier. I can't see anyone. I can't see what's happening. I hate this so much." But once he's settled in the car, he is pretty calm and quiet. It's just like once we're getting him into the carrier, he does this very distinct noise that sounds like he's just saying no. Like he'll just be like, "No!" And I'm like, "Oh my god, I'm so sorry." But he likes the destination, so I don't know, it's kind of funny. But yeah, we did have some struggle with going back to Blacksburg. It somehow ended up taking 9 hours the one time. It is a 5 hour drive tops, usually. So that was insane. So we did have to take a pause and stuff for him. But oh my gosh, I do not want to do that again. And I am gonna try and avoid that as much as possible this next time.
Wow. Well, at the very least, I'm glad at least he likes the destination, even if the trip not so much.
Yeah, he is very funny, but he does like meeting new people and being in spaces with his toys. So He's also really chill at the vet, so it is very funny how much he hates being in the carrier because he likes everything he's going to.
Well, overall, like I said, I'm just glad that I said that at least you're now in your more comfortable state with having animals, since that's practically how you've grown up, and of course, yeah, I've known you for a decade now, so it's crazy to think like how quickly time has gone.
Yeah, yeah. It definitely just kind of like feels like time is just shooting past me. I'll just be like, oh wow, it's Thursday.
Yeah, doesn't it feel like I don't know, does it feel like it's been that long to you, like since we met back in 2013?
I will say it definitely feels like some time has passed. Like there's been a lot that has happened in both our lives, but it does not feel like a full decade for sure. Like I feel like I'm missing some chunks. Like there has to be a few years in there that are not happening, but it's definitely been 10 years.
Yeah, because it's one of the things where it's like I definitely know like it's been a progression, and and like quite a bit of time has passed. But in the same regard, like when here in 10 years, it's like a decade, really, like already.
Yeah, it's like that's especially since we're younger. It's like that's such a large chunk of our lives. Like that's practically half of my life. It's crazy to think that because I used to have this issue where I wouldn't have friends for a very long period of time, and I would joke that I had like a 3 year cap, and then people would leave. So it is funny. I was just talking to my best friend last night about how we've known each other for 6 or 7 years, and he was like, "How long's it been? Like 2 years?" But I think he was mostly joking. But I was like, we've known each other a while now.
Yeah, it really is crazy to think about all of this, and glad to know that I beat out the 2 for year cap.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I said, this is just so fun though. Like I said, to catch up, and we had of course one time to catch up earlier because you were on my previous Brand Tech podcast back in 2021. Which, can you believe that that was almost 2.5 years ago?
Yeah, it's been a minute. There have been a lot of things that have been happening, but it feels like not a lot is happening at the same time. So I feel like I've just been existing from semester to semester and break to break. So I'm just like focusing on the next thing every time something happens. Like I was like, oh, the holidays are occurring, and now I have to worry about surgery. And I'm like, and now I have to worry about going back. It's like, no, there's time in between. I have to deal with each day as it comes, but I have to get that like mentally situated. And I'm like, oh yeah, I have to do this and this and this on this day, as opposed to just the next big thing that's happening. So it has been an interesting situation experiencing time and college and everything.
I would imagine as such, and well, yeah, like I said, and that discussion that we previously had was back. We recorded it on March 26th of 2021. So, it's crazy to think, like I said, how much time has elapsed since then. But what would you say? And during that discussion, for those who haven't seen it, we discussed accessibility technology and the importance of it, and how one simple act of kindness can really go a long way. And so I guess in the time from then to now, what would you say have been like some of the biggest like changes for you that we haven't previously spoken about?
Like as far as accessibility goes, or
Sure,
just in general.
just in general, or with accessibility, whatever you would.
Well, I will say it has been interesting because back in 2021, I did have a pretty serious injury that I treated as very minor injury. And so I did have to deal with accessibility, not in the way that we were speaking about it on the podcast, but like physical disability situations. And it's very interesting because having the ability to like video chat and stuff, it does make all of that very easy. And I did have like professors who would have Zooms if I, couldn't walk out of my dorm that day. Um, but a lot has changed in general. Like a lot of the culture of school and just like people talking normally. Like when I come home, I feel like there's a lot different of discussions occurring. There's just so much that has happened. I've been through a crazy relationship, and now I've been with my partner for a year, and we have a cat together. There's been a lot occurring. I am now of the age to drink. Like there's it's a lot of like little things, but there's just been a lot. I've also gone through a lot of hair colors. Just like that's a funny transition. Like I know what era I've been in based off of the hairstyle and color, but yeah, it's been an interesting development. I feel like I've gone through a lot of like the same cycles that I went through before, but just like with a different perspective. But yeah, it has definitely been some time.
But yeah, and I will say too, before we transition into some of our thoughts in just a moment, but yeah, but even thinking back to, I said, our previous discussion though, and so I know, of course, back then when we were speaking about accessibility technology, though, I know that we were expressing like a lot of our hopes for what's to come, but would you say that there have been improvements over these past 2 years, 3 years?
I will say there have definitely been some improvements. There's some stuff that just takes forever to develop. I will say, as far as the like blind and deaf technology, I will say cochlear implants have improved recently. There was a big step up, I think, in the last few years as far as that regard. Granted, not everyone who's deaf gets cochlear implants, but specifically in the cochlear implant community, it's like there's been a lot of developments. I know there's a lot of like simple technologies that people are more aware of now because like TikTok got really big and people are able to share like short form content about a bunch of these things. Like I know personally I get suggested all of the like people with prosthetics content, and also like prosthetic eyes and stuff have become very fashionable as of late, and I think that's really cool. But yeah, there's a lot of content out there. I feel like a lot more content out there than there was in 2021, and a lot more people open to talking about their disabilities. So I do think that is a good step up, and that does lead more to more developments. But I think there's definitely a lot of ways things will be improving in the next decade, probably.
And and I guess going into that a tad, so what development would you say you are most excited to see improve on over these next few years?
I am specifically like because I learned ASL and stuff like that. I am more excited for developments in the deaf community, but I think also there is like if I were to think of like a really big development that I would really like to see, I think it would be in just being able to communicate like how this is kind of hard to explain. I feel like there's an issue with communication between people about disabilities more so than the ability to communicate even though you have a disability, because I think there's a lot of people that aren't as educated, and I wish there was like a way to very quickly be like, oh yes, it's this and this, and everyone would just be like be educated about it. So like it's more of a development in education. I think if there was more talk in schools about dealing with like diverse people in your community, I think that would be like the biggest development we could have. Like there's a lot of people in different situations, either dealing with a disabled partner or family member or being disabled themselves. And there's not a lot of discussion about it in schools. Like you usually just have to ask the person directly what they're dealing with. And it can be mentally draining to be that person who's asked constantly about their disability. So I do think that would be like the biggest step would just be education.
Well, I mean, like I said, I definitely hope that things continue improving, and hopefully we could look at this 2 to 3 years from now, and hopefully see the the improvements that have been made, uh, yeah, between now and then, and and just continue improving. Because of course, while we know that not everything, unfortunately, can be perfect, we can always continue working to improve.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I will say too that even since the last time that we spoke back then, I had a audio only podcast with my previous show, and I would say our discussion is partially the reason too as to why I actually switched to a video show. I'm not sure if you knew that, but
Wow, I'm so influential.
well, yeah, well, I remember that. Well, I remember after our discussion, I was doing research into, you know, even like for captioning purposes. And at the time, audio podcasts were not set up in a way to easily add, um, easily add any sort of subtitles or transcripts or anything of that nature without being detrimental to the recording or being out of its way. And so, thankfully, because platforms such as YouTube do have those features, at least to a greater extent that podcasting did at the time, that truly was like um, one of the factors that made me switch over. And so for that, I do want to say a massive thank you so much for that, and for informing me and the audience back then about the importance of accessibility technology.
I'm glad you appreciated that discussion. I actually do use a lot of like my own computers, like live transcripts technology, but I will say it's very limited. I do often get the live transcript not available message at the bottom of the screen. But yeah, it is always good to have the options of even just like visual learners being like, ah, there's faces talking. I can understand a little better now.
Yes, yes, I completely agree with that, and I think it's just such a great way to help enhance the message and the stories that we tell here on the show, and yeah, but even going over these next few months as you are finishing out your time at Virginia Tech. So, what is the next step for you, Jax?
Well, next step is I'm actually going to do a program near Blacksburg in Radford, where I will be doing just a year program to get a laboratory science certification. And that would mean I could do phlebotomy, so like doing IVs and blood, collecting blood and stuff like that. And then I could just do cultures in hospitals, or I could go to a zoo or a medical school. It's pretty much like a degree you can take anywhere, and I don't have to work in complicated research and development situations. I could just like hang out in the back of a hospital, do my own thing, and I can at least do that for maybe 10 years. And then if I want to move on from that, I can move on from that pretty easily because that's a pretty open field.
That makes perfect sense, and of course, I wish you all the best with that. And is it May of 2024 when you officially graduate?
Yes.
Well, I definitely wish you all the best on your official graduation, and I hope that for this spring semester that you finish out strong, so that way you can enter into that next chapter confident.
Thank you. I also hope it goes well.
Yeah, and I say, is there anything else that you wanted to say before we head into our final thoughts closing out?
um, nope, I think I pretty much got it all out.
All right, well, for anyone who may be tuning in and like I said, have been enjoying our discussion and want to learn more about you, is there anywhere that people can potentially find you online? If not, that's quite all right as well. I at least want to provide that opportunity.
Well, I do have a Blue Sky, an X, and an Instagram that I use. I have a YouTube account, but it's not very uh, populated with content. Because I'm not the best at uploading videos. But I will say I post more to my Instagram, which is the real alternative Alex 15, which is a very long account name. Uh, but I'm not too active online. I am more so a if you DM me, I will respond back kind of person. But you can usually find me at either AX15 Crazy or Alternative Alex 15 because I used to go by a bunch of different nicknames, and so a lot of my usernames are about the same thing now. Or even you can find Jax 15 Crazy, but uh, yeah, they all follow a similar format there, so you'll find it somewhere.
Well, I definitely hope that everyone tunes in and yeah, and follows your pages and yeah, send you a message if if they think that you can help it anyway.
I would appreciate that. Yeah.
Yeah, and last but certainly not least, I did want to allow for you to go ahead and close out our episode with whatever be an inspirational thought, life lesson, or whatever the case may be. The floor is all yours, Jax.
All right. I will say, if you can adopt an animal, there are a lot of animals that need adopting in shelters out there. There is a lot of situations where breeding is not the best option for people, and I think that there are a lot of like older, especially cats, but also dogs and bully breeds specifically, um, in shelters. And I would say if you are interested in an animal and you have a support system, go and get it because they need someone. They need a home. If you have love and you have the ability to feed them and care for them, you should go for it. Do not get an animal if you're not experienced or able to get an animal because if you get rid of it, it's on the street again. It's a whole situation. There's people and outlets if you need to use them. So that's my major message.
Well, I think that is just such a great and fitting one. Thank you so much, Jax, for speaking with us, and please definitely continue keeping in touch. And I can't wait to see what you do next.
I will keep in touch. Thanks for having me.
Of course, and thank you. And for everyone watching, thank you so much, as always, for tuning into the Tansson Talk Show. I always appreciate it. Continue tuning in next week as we continue on our mission to bring people together. I'll see you next week. Take care.